I'm building another side table, and this time I'm using dowel joinery, and that's today's video. I'll be using this jig from Dowelmax to do all the joinery. It's a very well-made jig, very precise. It was designed in British Columbia, and I've owned it for over 15 years. I'm not sure how old the company is, but it still seems to be not that well known in the woodworking world. As you can see, I already have the parts cut and prepared for this table. The legs, the apron, the top. This video is about the joinery, not about the rest, so I skipped over all the joining and the planing and the selecting and all that. I've got another recent video, I'll link up there, where I built a similar table and I went through all of that in that one. So you can watch that video if you want to see something similar, though in that build I did not use dowels. Other doweling jigs work by drilling a set of holes right down the center of your workpiece. This jig is different in that it's set to index off of a face. With the silver aluminum, it's not so easy to see, but there's check marks here and here, which indicate the faces that you are indexing off of with the jig. So the basic idea is you're going to make a joint like this, and you will take the jig, you will put it on the index face here, and then you will drill your holes. And then you will take the other piece and make sure the same face is indexed, and again, drill your holes. And then you end up with a workpiece that is perfectly flush on the indexed faces. So if you're indexing here and here, these are going to end up absolutely perfectly flush. Now when it comes to the table legs and the apron, I don't actually want the pieces to be perfectly flush, but that's okay, there's a way around that. So for this apron and table leg, I actually want the apron to be inset on the leg, say about 1/8 of an inch or so. It makes a little shadow line, it's just a nice aesthetic choice. And the way you would do that is on the jig here, you would first drill your hole into the end of the apron, and then we take the jig, and it comes with an assortment of spacers, and I would take the 1/8 inch spacer and you would insert that into the jig here. So now the indexing face is offset by 1/8 of an inch, and then you would use that on the table leg, and so then the dowel holes on the table leg are now moved over 1/8 of an inch. Very precise again, so you end up with a perfect 1/8 inch reveal, which is what we want. I'll be using 1/4 inch dowels that are 1.5 inches long, and I have a test dowel here where I have a pencil line marked at the halfway mark, and I'll use that for setting the drill bit. Depending on your dowel size, you need to set the stop collar on your drill bit so that when it drills into the jig, it stops where you want it to, and that's on here. I have it set so that it is just a bit past the halfway point, so there's a little bit of room for glue. And this assumes that you want the dowel going in the same amount into each side of the joint. On my rail pieces, I've already cut the slots for how I'm going to mount the tabletop to the table, so I already know what is the outside face and the inside face of my rails, and the outside face is what I'm going to use for aligning the jig. So I'll take my piece of railing and I'll secure it firmly in the vise, and then I line up the jig, and this is the alignment face here, and so that is where the check mark part of the jig is going, as well as this is the top of the board. So again, with your finger you can feel nicely that this is properly aligned, and then clamp it into place, and now it's just a lot of simple drilling. I usually bring the drill out once, halfway, to help clear chips out of there. And there we have 4 perfect dowel holes. Then we can flip the piece over to do the other side. And you have to remember, when I flipped it over, now the alignment face is on this side, so I take the jig, turn it around, so again the check mark, the alignment face is lined up, and proceed again. And that's one rail. I don't have the best vise, so I find that can be one of the issues that I have, is just getting the vise to hold the piece properly so that it's not moving. And as with any other repetitive operation, you just have to be careful that you're sticking to the detail. So in this case, you know, every time I flip a piece end for end, I have to make sure that I am still on the alignment face with the jig. I guess that's one advantage the other doweling jigs where they just align for the center have, is that it doesn't really matter which way you clamp it. But and that is our 4 rails all done. Now I take the jig and loosen the knobs on this side where the alignment face is. I'm going to move that out, and I will be putting in the 1/8 inch spacer. The jig hardly looks different, so I have to be careful to remember to take it out again afterwards so that I don't forget it's in there. So now for the table legs, I've got them all marked here on the end, so I know that this is the inside face. So I want dowel holes here and dowel holes here on the adjacent face. So for the purposes of drilling the holes, the outside then are the alignment faces for this jig. So I've put a piece of green tape there to remind me that I'm aligning the jig to this face and then this face for the second set, and of course always to the top. So let me show you here. And I forgot that this piece is wide, so there's not really much room for clamping, so I have to open the jig up on the clamp side also and get a wider space in there, or a wider spacer. So now that there's room aligned here and aligned on the end. And with the legs, I'm drilling into the side of the board, not into the end, so I need to clamp them down here. So I'll bring them out here to this table, which is easier for you to see, and then clamp them into place. And now we drill our matching holes. That's the first set of holes. Now, and here is what I'm aligning to, so I turn the jig around. Clamp it into place and clamp it to the bench and proceed. And 4 legs all set. And yes, you end up with chips on the floor and on your workbench, but they're all chips, not fine dust. It's a good idea to do a dry fit, but the fluted dowels that I use I find can be a bit tight, so that can make a dry fit a bit challenging because you want to pull them apart again. And so what I've done is I've put together what I call a dry fit kit, where I just have an assortment of dowels, and then what I've done is I've taken my pliers and I've given them a bit of a squeeze, so they're just a little bit smaller, which makes them handy for when I want to do a dry fit, and then I can pull those out and use the real dowels for the actual assembly. I'll just put a couple of dowels in, and then here's an end piece, and that pops in there. And then on the other one, and that pops in with my perfect 1/8 inch reveal that I want. These are all looking good also. There's always going to be some people who want to talk about what joint is better, and they're going to want to talk about joint strength, and I don't care about any of that stuff. Dowels are basically a form of loose tenon joinery where the tenon is round instead of flat. I mean, there are videos out there on the internet that will talk about relative joint strength, and I've watched them, and they usually come down to the fact that if you look at the numbers, they're all pretty much strong enough. I mean, you could just do nails and the table would last for a while. You know, do what you want to do. I do dowels because I like dowels. It makes construction easy because I don't have to remember to allow for tenons when I'm cutting my pieces to length. I can just cut them to length, and later on I drill in my dowel holes, put in my dowels, and I end up with a really nice strong joint, and they look great. So that's a little aside on, you know, joint strength. Now things can get a little hectic during a glue up. Dowels are no different than other joinery methods at that point. I put a little dab of glue in each hole, and then I smear it around with a toothpick. My biggest problem is that I tend to put too much glue, and then I have glue squeeze out because these are fairly tight joints. The dowels have little flutes all along the edge, which is so that the glue has some place to go. And let's see. Got a little bit of glue squeeze out here, but not much. That's pretty good. And then I repeat that with the other set of legs. I'll bring you back when I'm doing these. And the 2 leg assemblies went well, so I'm just pressing on with getting everything together. And this is a little trickier because you have to line everything up. What you have to watch out for is that you don't put dowels in the wrong places. I've done that sometimes where I put dowels in here and I already have dowels over there. Okay, now we're on the clock. Now this has to go with that. I have to get all of these lined up, which is not usually a problem because everything is very precisely arranged. Starting at the bottom and make sure these joints are nice and tight, front and back. Measure corner to corner. Oh, try to measure corner to corner. That's 20 5/8 roughly. 20 5/8. So that was a little hectic. I chose to do all 4 at the same time, and I probably should have done the legs in pairs and then waited and then put it together because, you know, 32 dowels that I was trying to line up. But I let the glue dry overnight. And with that, the dowel joinery part of the project is over. So it's time now to round over all the edges, and then I'll apply some finish. And then we can get it put together. And that turned into a lovely table. So I think one little interesting tidbit about this table project is that almost exactly a month ago, I made this little table for my living room. And this one I made with pocket holes, a quick and simple little table. And when I built it, I had no intention of making another one. I just needed a little table. But then I had the idea to do another one, and I thought, well, this one I'll do with dowel joinery. And again, when I built this one, I wasn't planning on making another, but since I wanted another table, I built them so they would nicely nest together. So when I don't need 2 tables, I can stack them like that. And when I do, I just pull the one out. Notice the coloring too. Let me bring you in closer. This is cherry. This is cherry. Bought this cherry at the same time from the same lumber mill, but this one has had about a month more aging in my living room. And this one, of course, is freshly milled, freshly planed. I love how cherry darkens up. Starts out rather pale, but I really like the rich reddish brown look it gets later on. So that's about it for this project. Now, if you're interested in the Dowelmax jig and you'd like to maybe see some more, I've put together a playlist, which I'll link here, of all the different projects that I've built over the years using this jig in various ways. And, of course, I'll put a link to the company down below. But otherwise, I think that's about it for this one. So we'll see you next time.